Dayton's ESPN Radio, powered by...
It's a tradition at the Flower Man. A dozen roses and a free crystal vase. Only $15.99. And it's real crystal. Thank you, Flower Man. Only $15.99 for a dozen roses and a free crystal vase. Must limit it to the first 1,000 customers. The Flower Man, it's a tradition. Go to flowermanflowers.com. That's flowermanflowers.com.
Black history is American history. And this Black History Month, the Ohio Education Association believes every student deserves the right to learn the full story of the nation we share. I'm OEA President Jeff Wensing. In 33 years as a teacher, I've seen how honest, inclusive education helps students become critical thinkers and engaged citizens. This Black History Month, stand with the Ohio Education Association as we stand up for our students' freedom to learn.
Tax season is here, and I'm sure you're thinking about who is going to do my taxes this year. Try my friends at Arrowhead Tax Service in New Carlisle. Call Michael Maxwell and Joe Tanis today, 937-543-5770. They're ready to serve you at 100 South Church Street in New Carlisle. Arrowhead Tax Service gives back to the community through athletics and nonprofits, and all new clients save 10% off. Online at arrowheadtaxservice.com, where their target is your satisfaction.
Billy, your gas light's on. We need to stop and fill up.
No way, Jen. Gas around here is too expensive. We can make it a little further.
Billy, listen to your big sister. You don't need to drive all over searching for the lowest gas prices. Do what I do and use Upside.
Upside?
Do you live under a rock, Billy? Upside is the hottest cash back app out there. It's free to download, and you get real cash back for every gallon of gas you buy. I use it all the time, and I've already made around $200.
You can make that kind of cash back just for buying the gas you have to buy anyway?
Yes, I'm looking at the Upside app now, and you can get up to a $5 cashback bonus on your first tank.
Okay, I'm stopping to download Upside and fill up my tank. Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code SUPPLY to get up to a $5 cashback bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime, right to your bank, to PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code SUPPLY to get up to a $5 cashback bonus on your first tank. That's code SUPPLY for up to a $5 cashback bonus.
Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show, right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
All right, everybody, we are off and rolling. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. You could text or you can call. The rebound rundown, Paul Frischner. We'll talk Dayton Flyers basketball as they are in action. Coming up later on tonight, they're looking to snap a 4-game losing streak. They haven't lost 5 straight in over 20-plus years, and the Flyers are looking to, put an end to that losing streak coming up here later on tonight against the Bonnies at home. So we'll talk about that more with Paul Frischner coming up around the corner. We'll also talk about the Red Hawks. They moved up to number 23 in the country. They're 22-0. They're also in action tonight. They're at Buffalo. Buffalo actually took Miami of Ohio to overtime at Miami just a few weeks ago. In fact, it was the win over Buffalo in overtime that propelled Miami into the top 25. But to their credit, they haven't lost since, or really haven't lost at all. So we'll talk about that more coming up around the corner. The mid-major top 25 poll, Wright State for the first time in 2 years, or 3 years, I should say, has cracked the mid-major top 25. Dayton regularly at the top of that. They've fallen out due to their recent 4-game losing streak. Wright State has jumped in the top 25 in the mid-major top 25 poll. Wright State will be in action on the road at Robert Morris tomorrow night. And that's a nationally televised game on ESPN, by the way. But we'll also have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Okay. I want to open up with more Reds just because I know we spent a lot of time on the Eugenio Suarez conversation yesterday. And I have to say that's still, that's still sending a lot of shockwaves through Reds country because the Reds actually, it actually showed that, the Reds front office is willing to, maybe go outside of their comfort zone a little bit. The Reds, at first I wasn't really I was frustrated with the Kyle Schwarber decision because the fact that they were able to fork over or willing to fork over $25 million a year for 5 years. But when he rejected them, then all of a sudden it's like, well, man, okay, $25 million a year for 5 years. What if you took that same $25 million a year for the next 5 years and at least put that into 2 or 3 other players, that have a high production clip? So that's where I was frustrated after that, but they at least turned right around and they actually spent $10 million less than what they were willing to for Kyle Schwarber to get Eugenio Suarez on a 1-year deal for $15 million. So that's a huge deal. But the one thing we've always talked about is, and I've always come to the defense of Nick Krall, because the bottom line is we like to always blame Nick Krall. We always like to blame the front office. But I guess the thing that I always like to go back to is, what do you and I really know about the job of a general manager, especially in Major League Baseball, where there is no salary cap, there is no salary floor, and you are at the mercy of what your owner is willing to let you spend. And whatever your owner is willing to let you spend is how myself, you, and those around Reds country judge the performance of Nick Krall on. We don't give him the benefit of the doubt. We don't give him the benefit of the doubt. I've done this bit a few times, and I always forget the Dodgers general manager. I always forget his name, so I always type it in, and it's Brandon Gomes. There we go. Brandon Gomes. Brandon Gomes is the general manager for the Dodgers, and I've done this bit for a while now because we don't know the name of Brandon Gomes, but we like to sit there and say Nick Krall's a bad general manager, as opposed to who's a good general manager in Major League Baseball. And if you could pick any general manager to come be the general manager of the Cincinnati Reds, who would you pick? Who would you pick? And what would that general manager do differently than what Nick Krall has done? Because what Nick Krall has done is he has taken what little resources he's been basically allowed to play with, and he has turned it into solid trades, solid offseason additions, a farm system that developed and turned into the current roster that we have now. In fact, that roster that has put us in position as Reds fans to have high expectations for this team, to the point to where we get mad for what they don't add on top of it. Nick Krall is responsible for Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott. Nick Krall is responsible for the Jonathan India trade that brought Brady Singer over. Nick Krall is responsible for Chase Burns and for Rhett Lauder. Nick Krall is responsible for Graham Ashcraft. Nick Krall is responsible for Ellie De La Cruz and Spencer Steer and Matt McClain. And Nick Krall is now responsible for the return of Eugenio Suarez. But a lot of you out there like to just punch on Nick Krall and say that he is the problem. And I don't think Nick Krall is the problem at all. I promised you this much. If the Reds traded Nick Krall for Brandon Gomes, the general manager for the Los Angeles Dodgers, would the Dodgers become bad because of Nick Krall, and would the Reds become good because of Brandon Gomes? No, I actually think that that would not happen at all. I just think that Brandon Gomes, who could just basically open up his wallet and just say, okay, how much you want paid? Okay, here you go. He has there is no limit for how much Brandon Gomes, the general manager of the Dodgers, is allowed to spend. Nick Krall earlier today, when asked about what went into, what led to the Reds being willing to kind of go a little bit past their budget that they had set, how did that go about? How did Nick Krall find a way to get the Eugenio Suarez deal done, considering the fact that they were already at or a little past what they intended to spend heading into the offseason? Take a close listen.
We went to ownership last week, and I talked to Bob and Phil, and we said this is probably where it's going to go, and what we're going to need that would be above and beyond our budget, and they approved it, and it was, we're excited to be able to do that and go get it.
That was Nick Krall earlier today, talking about kind of what the process of what went in to how aggressive they were going to be to pursue Eugenio Suarez, basically saying, hey, I had to go to Phil and Bob Castellini, Phil Castellini, owners of the Cincinnati Reds, and say, hey, look, this is where we're at money-wise. If we pursue him, this is where we feel like this is going to go. It's going to put us past our budget line. How should we proceed? And to the front office's credit, to the ownership's credit, who we also bury a lot, they were willing to make an exception for this particular move, just like they were willing to make an exception for the possibility of getting Kyle Schwarber, and that's how the Reds went and got this done with Eugenio Suarez. So because of that, all of a sudden, Nick Krall looks like he knows what he's doing. I think Nick Krall's always done what he's doing. I just think he's very limited on what he can do. Brandon Gomes is one of those where it's always interesting to me. Brandon Gomes is one of those where he's the general manager for the Dodgers. It's not like, oh man, Shohei Ohtani didn't want to go to the Dodgers, but Brandon Gomes sweet talked him into it. Mookie Betts didn't want to be a Dodger, but he talked him into it. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those where Nick Krall would actually probably do better as a general manager with the Dodgers than Gomes, because, I mean, what has Gomes, and I'm being disrespectful here because I actually don't know the career path of Gomes. I don't know where he's come from, but I promise you this much. Nick Krall, if he ever gets the chance to be a GM for a team with way more resources, I think because of the bumps that he's taken along the way, having to be a GM of a team with, and I know he's the president of baseball operations, but for him to be the GM of a team that has so many restrictions and lack of resources, the fact that he can get this done with all those lack of resources, I think that when he does get to a team where they do give him unlimited resources or double the resources he has here, I think Nick Krall is going to be viewed as one of the best GMs in baseball. So, again, I always laugh when stuff like this happens. I never hear Reds fans say, good for Nick Krall. What a great job by Nick Krall. But had they not landed Eugenio Suarez, man, Nick Krall doesn't know what he's doing. Nick Krall is very limited on what he can do. And as you heard, to the Castellini's credit, they were willing to go and make an exception for this particular move. So we're live. By the way, we are live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. David Mann on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. First of all, David, appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. David says, what's up, Kinner? I don't blame Krall for the spending side of things. I blame or question him for the questionable talent that he has traded for or wildly overpaid for more than once in free agency that has bit them square in the backside. I question his eye for the right talent, basically. That's where I disagree. I mean, I get that, and I think probably the most popular move that you're going to talk about is the Mike Moustakas move. I think that's probably the one that was one of the most costly mistakes that Nick Krall made. And then obviously Jeimer Candelario. Jeimer Candelario produced the first year. Jeimer Candelario was Jeimer Candelario 0 for 2, 0 for 3, 0 for 4 last year, which ultimately led to them moving on. I don't think that was a horrible move. But see, that's the thing. Like, we get mad when the Reds don't spend money, and then they went and spent money on one of the best available hitting free agents at that time, and it didn't work out. I still defend the Mike Moustakas move to this day. Mike Moustakas was the top third base free agent, that free agent class, and there were a lot of teams lining up to get him. The Reds were able to pry him away from other teams. I think that was still a good signing. It just wasn't a good result. Like, there are times where it's okay to say, hey, the intent, as long as the intent is right. If other teams were willing to go get Mike Moustakas, it's not like nobody wanted Mike Moustakas and then they just, offered him up 15, 20 mil or whatever it was. There were other teams lining up to pay him. They wanted him. I disagree with that. Like, you're not going to hit a home run on every, no pun intended, you're not going to hit a home run with every single free agent acquisition that you get. And David, maybe I'm missing some obvious ones, but this is also Nick Krall, who was also able at the time when he was the general manager. He went and he was able, when they had, Luis Castillo, they were able to go and they were able to get Trevor Bauer. They were able to get Sonny Gray from the Yankees, Trevor Bauer from, at the time, the Indians. They went and got Nick Castellanos. That worked out very well. In fact, that was such a they got so much value for that. He was getting paid $15 million by the Reds, and he ended up he was so great for the Reds that he went and got like a $30 or $40 million contract. Castellanos was a hell of an addition. Trevor Bauer was a hell of an addition. Like you had Simon, Alfredo Simon. Alfredo Simon is what actually turned into Eugenio Suarez, and Eugenio Suarez would go on to hit 189 home runs for the Cincinnati Reds. So I slightly disagree there, slightly. Chad Kinser says, bring Bauer back on a 2-year, $5 million deal. He wants back in Major League Baseball that bad. He'll take that deal. Is he back in the news cycle, Chad? I haven't seen his name pop up in a while. I'm with you. I don't mind a team giving Trevor Bauer another shot. It was ridiculous what happened. He got falsely accused. The woman lied. And he had that record sign. He had a record-breaking contract with the Dodgers after winning Cy Young with the Reds, the first Cy Young winner in Reds history in that COVID-shortened season. He turned that Cy Young season with the Reds into a record-breaking contract with the Dodgers. Pitched, I think, less than a handful of games, and then ultimately has never pitched a game in Major League Baseball since. He's pitched against Major League Baseball teams like in the spring or whatever, with his other team, but. This is where it's tough to defend Trevor Bauer because it has nothing to do with the accusation against him. It's if you're going to take shots at Rob Manfred the way he did, I mean, he was constantly ripping Rob Manfred, constantly taking shots at him and the powers that be that run baseball. If there's collusion behind the scenes to not let him in, that's wrong, but you also can't poke the bear. Trevor Bauer was constantly poking the bear as far as that's concerned, and that's my only argument as far as Bauer goes, but nonetheless. But Mark Smith said, what about the cap that the owners are trying to pass? First of all, Mark, it's been a while. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Mark, what about that? Can you clarify, like, when you're saying what about the cap that the owners are trying to pass, what are you meaning that in reference to? I'll get back to you on that. I just want to know the context of the way you're asking. So just let me know. By the way, for just tuning in, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. The reason I ask all this is because on Facebook, I'd ask people to, the off season, it's not technically done, but I think the Reds off season is done. I don't think they're going to be doing, any more movement. What grade would you give the Reds off season? If I would have asked this a week ago, I think the grades would have been drastically different. It's funny how one player can just completely change the narrative and the perception as far as that goes. But what grade would you give the Cincinnati Reds? I think a B plus. I think if they would have got Kyle Schwarber, I would have given them a complete A. But because they got in, Kyle Schwarber would have allowed me to have given them an A because the Reds were willing to give him a 5-year contract. If you would have locked Kyle Schwarber up for the next 5 years, and you would have had him alongside, Elly De La Cruz for the next couple of years before he becomes a Dodger. If you would have had Kyle Schwarber in this lineup for the next 5 years alongside the Hunter Greens, Nick Lodolos, Chase Burns and company, I would have given the Reds a complete A because of the turnaround that they did with the bullpen. I'm only going to give them a B for the Suarez thing because you only got him on a 1-year deal. There is a second-year option. I don't think there's going to be a 2027 season to begin with, but I would have to give the Reds a B, and that's a hell of a grade. Because a week ago, if you would have asked me, I would have said a C plus because I think they killed it when it came to revamping the bullpen. I mean, they crushed it with the bullpen. I think that they had a okay bullpen with a lot of deficiencies and holes and weaknesses and with not a lot of depth. I think it's one of the most versatile, deep bullpens that the Reds have had in quite some time, and it complements what I think is a top 5 rotation in baseball. So I was willing to give them a C a week ago. Now I'm willing to bump them up into that B range because of the addition of Eugenio Suarez. You needed a power bat, and you got a guy that hit 49 home runs and 118 RBIs last year. So I give them a B for this offseason based on what you should realistically expect on what you would get from a Reds offseason as far as that goes. Chad Kinser on the YouTube side said, I'd say a B. We need one more big-time bat. I think I said that earlier this week. I don't know who that big-time bat would be. Chad, who would you suggest? Nick Castellanos is available or will be available. I think there's some kind of finagling that would need to be done to get the Phillies to pay out the rest of his contract. The Reds could almost get him for almost nothing. I mean, you have to pay him, but it would be dirt cheap. If they were able to pull that off, and Castellanos, I think that's a low risk, high reward type of situation, because if he comes over here and it doesn't work out, you didn't pay anything for him really. But we also know the capability. We know the ceiling. We know what he's capable of. That would be awesome to get Castellanos back into a rotation with that outfield as far as that goes. But yeah, another bat would be, Nick Castellanos. That's what I thought. I don't think that's a bad target. I think the Reds there is a chance. I do think there's a legit shot that the Reds could land Nick Castellanos. I think they could do it. They just have to be able to maneuver some things. It would be a trade. They would have to give up a prospect, not a high-end prospect, but a prospect, and Philly would have to eat some dollars, a lot of dollars. But man, you get Suarez and Castellanos along with revamping that bullpen, then I would still keep it at a B plus because you don't know what Castellanos you're getting. Castellanos was not very good last year, but we also know what he's capable of. So, I would kind of be in the middle as far as that goes. Charles, what up, Charles? Charles Downs on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page said, would you rather be the Cardinals, who have less than $46 million on their books and now multiple top 100 prospects in baseball, or the Reds for the next 5 to 10 years? For the next 5 to 10 years, the Reds will never be competitive 10 years at a time. So I'm fine with where the Reds are at right now. I'd rather be the Reds right now. You have a top 5 rotation in baseball, top 10 bullpen. You have one of the best power hitters in baseball in Eugenio Suarez. You have a generational talent in Ellie De La Cruz. I would rather be the Reds for the next 5 years than the Cardinals, because when you say the next 5 to 10 years, the Reds will never be competitive for 10 years straight. When the Reds catch lightning in a bottle with an abundance of prospects that all blossom at the same time, the way we've seen the last couple of years, you get that 3, 4, 5 year run, and then you start the process over. It's unfortunate, but that's how this goes. In the late 2000s into the early 2010s, we got to reap the rewards of the development and the call-ups, the Jay Bruces, the Brandon Phillips, the Joey Vottos, right? The Todd Frazier's, the Cuetos and company, all of those were developed, were talents that came up. They all blossomed at the same time or within the window of time. They got to the playoffs. You got an MVP out of Joey Votto. And then, you move on from Dusty Baker. You have to, you blow it all up and then you start it all over. And then they started to rebuild again. And that was around the time that you started to try to get the pieces like Jesse Winker and company to work. It didn't. So they had to blow that up again. And then that's what led to this iteration of the Reds. But yeah, since 2010, there's been two and a half rebuild attempts. This rebuild attempt was so fast, though. This rebuild attempt was very fast. I've always felt that the Reds were a year ahead of schedule. Either way. But 937-518-1410. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio. So the offseason, the Reds had to get a power bat and they had to fix the bullpen. And they didn't just fix the bullpen. They revamped the entire thing. Lefties, righties, top 10 bullpen in baseball to complement a top 5 rotation. And they went and got the second best power hitter in free agency. So I don't know how you could give them anything less than a B. I'm giving them a B right now just because I love the Suarez signing, but it's just a 1-year deal. Had they got Schwarber for that 5-year, $25 million per that we talked about, months ago, this would be a no-brainer, an A off season for the Reds. But it's still not a bad one, and the Reds are going to compete in 25 or 26. But let me know. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show YouTube channel. Head there now. Let me know your thoughts in the chat, or you could text us at 937-518-1410. What grade would you give the Cincinnati Reds, the front office, for this offseason? We'll discuss more when we come back. We'll also transition to college basketball. Dayton Flyers, they're in action tonight, looking to snap a 4-game losing streak. Wright State will be in action on Wednesday night, tomorrow night, as they're on the road at Robert Morris. They cracked the mid-major top 25 today, and this is the hottest streak that the Raiders have been on in years. The hottest streak they've been on since Clint Sargent took over last season. The Red Hawks, Miami of Ohio, they're back in action tonight. They're at Buffalo. Buffalo really gave Miami all they could handle a few weeks ago, at Miami whenever they forced Miami into overtime. Now, Miami beat Buffalo in overtime, but that was the last win before that finally propelled them into the top 25. So they're going to have their hands full coming up later on tonight. It's the Justin Kinner Show. We'll be right back.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Charlie's battery is struggling to start. Not ideal before the tailgate, so he goes to AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone,
where a friendly AutoZoner tests his battery for free. Looks like he needs a new one, so he gets a Duralast battery.
have fun and stay warm.
And he makes it to the tailgate early enough to get his favorite spot. Free battery testing and charging. No hassles, just help.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Ohio has over 920,000 diabetics. If you are a diabetic, take a step in the right direction by having your feet checked routinely by a podiatric physician, the most qualified doctors to care for your feet. Adding a podiatrist to your healthcare team can help you better manage the effects of diabetes on your feet. Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association podiatric physicians are located throughout the state. For more information or to find a member of the Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association near you, visit ohiofoot.org.
Are you ready to tackle this tax season alone? Well, you don't have to. Belmont Business Consultants and Tax Services, with its 30-plus years of experience, is here to help you with business and individual taxes, bookkeeping, and payroll, either in person, drop-off, or through their secure client portal. Belmont Business Consultants in Eaton and Dayton is standing by. Call them in Eaton at 937-472-3300 or in Dayton at 937-252-2217 or on the web at belmontbctxs.com.
Save big now during Menard's Super Savings Sale. Brighten your home with a 3-panel LED light bulb, now just $1.99. Stay warm with a hardwood firewood bundle, only $3.99. Stock up with Clorox All-Purpose Cleaner, just $2.99. A 16-pack of Zest Bar Soap is only $7.99. Hurry, these great deals won't last long. Sign up for Menard's emails to get the weekly flyer plus exclusive daily flash sales right to your inbox.
Save big money at Menards.
This President's Day, Pure Talk is honoring Jackson and Lincoln by offering unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data for just $25 a month. Meanwhile, Big Wireless is honoring Benjamin Franklin by charging families hundreds of dollars for the same 5G service. What's up with that? Ben Franklin wasn't even a president. When you switch to Pure Talk, you'll be in business with an American wireless company that supports our vets in a big way and keeps all their customer service in this country. That's important. And you'll be on the same towers the big carriers use, so you'll get the same 5G service without the inflated price. So hang on to your Benjamins and switch to Pure Talk for a Jackson and a Lincoln. No contract, no hidden fees. Dial pound 250, say Mike Rowe, and you'll get 50% off your first month when you switch. That's pound 250, Mike Rowe, for an American wireless company that is truly unprecedented. Pure Talk.
Are you involved with a school or charitable fundraiser that holds an auction, bid and buy booth, or a raffle to raise money? Many of the most popular items at auctions or booths are autographed sports memorabilia items. How can you get great items in your event? Call Adam Walter at Sports Investments. Sports Investments has a consignment program for fundraisers that has provided outstanding items. You select items that are proven sellers, including autographed pieces from Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Joey Votto, the Big Red Machine, the Bengals, the Browns, UC, XU, UK, NKU, Dayton, Louisville, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Sports Investments consigns the items to your group at a highly discounted price. And when they sell, you keep the profit. You don't pay anything in advance. And if something doesn't sell, you simply return it. You'll enjoy the experience of dealing with the Walter family. Call them at 513-891-5000. Email Adam at sportsinvestments.com or visit them on Montgomery Road, right off I-275, just 40 minutes from WING.
ABS, does that mean always bring snacks? TPMS, does that mean tiny potholes make squeaks? AWD, does that mean all wheels are dancing? No, that's not right. But here's the truth. Carroll Works Tire knows the real meanings and will keep your car safe without all the jargon. Carroll Works Tire. Tires, service, and tire values you can count on. Find us online at c-wtire.com or talk to a real human at 937-461-5441.
Game day starts before kickoff. Get ready for the big game with help from Menards. Find great deals on sofas and recliners to keep guests comfortable all game long. Score big savings and stock up on game day goodies. Shop a variety of snacks and drinks to keep your party fueled up. Make Menards a part of your game plan. Shop in store or on Menards.com and save big money.
Save big money at Menards.
For 100 days, I'm going to cross the 7 continents because the answers to everything important are out there at the edges of our world. I'm stepping into the unknown. Where are we going? To see our planet as it's never been seen before. From pole to pole.
Pole to Pole with Will Smith from National Geographic. Now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
Show me the way.
This is the story of the one. As the purchasing manager at a manufacturing plant, she knows the only thing more important than having the right safety gear is having it there when you need it. That's why she partners with Grainger for auto reordering, so her team members can count on her to have cut-resistant gloves on hand, and each shift can run safely and efficiently. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, and we welcome you back. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We're going to talk some college hoops coming up here around the corner. Paul Frischner from the Rebound Rundown is going to hang out with us coming up in about less than 10 minutes. So excited to catch up with him. He'll join us coming up here shortly. Okay, we talked a lot about the Suarez thing yesterday, and I'm talking more about it again today because I was fascinated to hear Nick Krall, the president of baseball operations. Brad Meter's the GM, but we saw this in like with the way the Reds do a lot of this. Brad Meter's the general manager, but Nick Krall's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Just like when Nick Krall was the general manager, you know, you also had Dick Williams, who was doing a lot of the heavy lifting as president of baseball operations. So it's kind of how this is working. But, you know, I thrown it out when we opened the show just because, you know, when the Reds weren't hitting on a lot of these free agents, everyone was ripping Nick Krall. And I kept saying, I think we need to stop being critical of Nick Krall, because I actually think that, you know, we're judging him based on end results that, you know, a race that's not starting from the same block across Major League Baseball. You know, you look at what to be the general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers when you have unlimited money and resources. How hard is your job really? The only question as the general manager of the Dodgers that you have to ask when you go talk to prospective free agents is, hey, do you want to move to LA? And if they don't want to move to LA, that would be the only reason, because every other thing would be taken care of. They would take care of their money like you wouldn't believe, and they do that for everyone. Like Nick Krall has no money to spend, but yet he is constantly out there scouring the market. I think that Nick Krall will be a hell of a GM if he ever moves to a team that gives him more money and resources. Because you heard this earlier today. So Nick Krall, addressing the media earlier, had this to say about kind of what went into getting this Eugenio Suarez deal done.
We went to ownership last week, and I talked to Bob and Phil, and you know, we said this is probably where it's going to go, and what we're going to need that would be above and beyond our budget, and they approved it, and you know, it was, you know, we're excited to be able to do that and go get it.
So let's say the Reds didn't get Eugenio Suarez. What would you guys say? Man, Nick Krall, he doesn't even know what he's doing. I can't believe he needed a power bat and he didn't get one. He's a horrible GM or president of baseball operations. Well, you just heard him. He knew what it was going to take to get Suarez, and he had to go to Phil and Bob Castellini to basically get their blessing to go above their budget to be able to land him. So had they said no, then you guys would have got mad at Nick Krall, and that's why I get defensive of Nick Krall, because I think Nick Krall has been actually a phenomenal general manager / president of baseball operations. The only reason we are so pissed off right now is because we know we have expectations, and you know what teams don't have expectations? Bad ones. That's why when people talk so bad about the Reds, especially the fan base, they're like, then this team's horrible, this front office is horrible. And I said, well, hold on. They're not as aggressive as what we would all like them to be, but let's be clear. Bad teams don't have expectations. You know what you know what you don't hear from fan bases of bad teams? You don't hear a peep about general managers, because there's nothing that those GMs are doing that you want them to do, because you don't have expectations for them to begin with. We expect the Reds to be in contention to compete because of that pitching, because of Elly De La Cruz, because you have Terry Francona as your manager. So we have expectations because Nick Krall got Terry Francona to be the manager, because Nick Krall got Elly De La Cruz, because Nick Krall got Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder. He was able to make the trade moving on from Jonathan India, who, by the way, Rookie of the Year, also Nick Krall. You know what I mean? Like, we could do this over and over and over. But the only reason that we have expectations is because of the phenomenal job with all the limited resources that the Reds have provided for Nick Krall. I'm a Nick Krall guy. In case you guys can't tell. Is he a top 5 GM? No. But I don't think he's the problem. I think it's just a spending problem. The Reds lack the ability, the ability to consistently spend, and it's just, it's crazy to me. that so many people, and like I said, you just heard him. He had to go get permission to go above the budget to get Suarez. So he got him. So now Nick Krall's good, right? But if he wouldn't have got him because the Castellinis would have said no, you guys would have said he's a bad GM. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense either way. Ron Howard on the Justin Kinder Show Facebook page. Ron, first of all, hope you're doing well. Ron says, Justin, all these moves look good, but get real. This team is still a low 80-win team. Nothing stands out about this team, average till proven. Ron, come on now. Nothing stands out about this team. Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Chase Burns, top 5 rotation. Nothing stands out about this team. They have a top 10 bullpen. Nothing stands out about this team. A Hall of Fame manager and Terry Francona. Nothing stands out about this team with Ellie De La Cruz and now Eugenio Suarez, who hit 49 home runs and 118 RBIs last year. Nothing stands out about this team. Come on now. This team's not winning the World Series. This team's not going to win 110 games. But this team is going to be right there in the playoff conversation, and they're going to be right there in the mix to win this division. This team checks off so many boxes. And I don't get it. I don't get it. David on Facebook says, on paper, they should be an 85-plus win team, but they need certain players to bounce back, continue developing the right direction, stay relatively healthy. And David, I don't know and David Mann, yesterday we had another David call into the show, and our guy Shaw, shout out to Shaw. But Shaw was doing the stuff that drives me nuts that we do with teams when we do but you got to say, like, for instance, like the Bengals, we know Joe Burrow has a humongous problem staying healthy. But the Bengals are a Super Bowl, they're always going to be viewed as a team that should be in a Super Bowl contention because of Joe Burrow. We can't always do if Joe Burrow's healthy, we know that. We know. But as of right now, Joe Burrow's healthy. So until I hear that he's not healthy, we're going to go into next season knowing how dangerous the Bengals could be with a healthy Joe Burrow. Like, I just don't like that approach where every time one of our teams does something, it's, they got to stay healthy. They got to stay. Well, I get that. The Cleveland Cavaliers have inquired about Anthony Davis. That's a hell of a move. He's one of the best big men in the NBA. But I guarantee you that entire move, which, by the way, I don't want them to get Anthony Davis, but that's besides the point. The entire response to Anthony Davis, if he ends up in Cleveland, which I doubt happens, but if he ends up in Cleveland, every one of you Cavs fans will say, that's a good move, but can the guy stay healthy? Well, that's a good question. Can he stay healthy? But if he's healthy and he's a Cleveland Cavalier, I'm going to approach it as, okay, they have Anthony Davis until they don't. You have Eugenio Suarez until you don't. You have Matt McClain until you don't. I can't stand that negativity of every time one of our teams does something, it's, what if that player gets hurt? Well, what if Shohei gets hurt? What if Mookie Betts gets hurt? What if Freddie Freeman gets hurt? Well, you have a whole laundry list of superstars. I get that. That's a crappy way. I mean, if that's the case, then I don't even want to check in on baseball until we get to October and, the Reds are in it. Cool. Let's watch. Because we're not allowed to get excited about something because somebody might get hurt. Nah. I just, that's a no for me, dog. That's a no for me. And I do think this is, and that goes back to Ron's point earlier. Ron said something about the lines of they're an 80-win team, as if that's the Reds, I think, are in that 85 to 90 win range. I think they're going to be 88 to 93 wins in that range is where I think that the Reds are going to be. And that is me estimating that based on, I think EO's numbers are going to be less than last year. I think he's going to hit 85 to 90 RBIs. I think he's going to have about 35 to 40 home runs, numbers that will take a major dip from the year before. But and I heard this today on the Talking Baseball podcast, they were saying that, and I didn't know this, that historically there's not a lot of big time power bats at third base. Like Eugenio Suarez is one of only 2 third basemen to have, of course, 49 home run seasons, and he has multiple. Eugenio Suarez, let's just say that he does consistently come back and put up similar numbers to last year. If he has a 49, 50 home run season, if he has 110 to 120 RBIs, then no, I'm going to put the Reds at the base of 90 wins. at the base of 90 wins. Because this is a team that won low 80s last season with no home run power whatsoever. And now the Reds are going to get 50 additional home runs, 118 additional RBIs. Nah, that's a 90-win team if that's the case. With that pitching, with that manager, nah. So, either way. All right. We're going to talk some college basketball coming up around the corner. Colton Schmidt Colton said, I wouldn't mind the Cavs doing the Harden-Garland swap. I'm so in between on the James Harden thing. The James Harden to Cleveland thing, that'd be crazy. You know, Cleveland is a very weird NBA team because in the last decade, they would have had, Kyrie Irving to LeBron James to Dwayne Wade to potentially James Harden to Donovan Mitchell. The names that have played in Cleveland is pretty remarkable if they end up, it's remarkable anyways, but if they do pull it off and get James Harden, I don't know. That's the other thing too. Like Garland is one of those players that there's a high ceiling there, but is he ever going to reach it? James Harden comes in, and that's another instant score, ball handler with Donovan Mitchell. I'm intrigued by it. I just don't love it. So I don't know. We'll talk about that more coming up later on. But, so there's that. Shaw says, what you call negative, I call being realistic. The players, Shaw, I call it being borderline just pointless in your take on this. Well, what if he gets hurt? What if anyone gets hurt? I don't know why we're doing this again, Shaw. It's called being realistic. What if he gets hurt? What if he gets hurt? You can say that about anybody. You can say that about anything, any sport, any player. What if he gets hurt? Then he gets hurt, and that impacts the team. Duh. Why sign a player ever? Because he can get hurt. Man, I hope the Reds sign Ella De La Cruz, not Shaw, because he could get hurt. Man, I really wish the Reds would have got Kyle Schwarber, not Shaw, because Kyle Schwarber could have got hurt. Could have got hurt. Oh, can't do anything because could have got hurt. My goodness. You're not being realistic. You're being negative. Those are negative comments. You could try to justify it all you want. I'm not being negative. I'm being real. No, you are being negative. You were the same one that was crying a week ago, 2 weeks ago, because this team, they just don't spend money. They don't do anything. They don't do this. They don't do that. Well, they did this. They did that. They signed Suarez, and now your big concern is, what if he gets hurt? I got to go. I got to get to my guy, Paul Frischner. He's going to join us when we come back. At least I hope Paul Frischner could join us. What if he gets hurt? We'll be right back.
If you're watching football this weekend, you know how it goes. Somebody's always hungry by the first quarter. So call Pizza Hut and get the Big New Yorker for just $10. Our biggest pizza for the biggest games. These slices are huge, like use two hands and fold it huge. Feed your crew and order ahead at pizzahut.com or in the app.
Pizza Hut!
Ask for limited time offer. Prices, participation, and availability may vary. Additional charge for extra toppings, max 3 and extra cheese. Taxes, tip, and delivery fee not included.
Thinking about a new home, a remodel, or an outdoor upgrade? Celebrate 70 years at the Miami County Home and Outdoor Living Show, presented by 84 Lumber, February 13th through the 15th at Hobart Arena in Troy. Talk one-on-one with local experts. See the latest ideas and
Flores. Obviously, that was the big Reds news from over the weekend. And, although I'm super excited about, 49 home runs, 118 RBIs from a season ago, the bottom Reds needed help with this lineup. Is one bad enough? Even if they would have got Kyle Schwarber, that would have been a major upgrade from anything that they had a year ago. But just how much of we expect to be made from Eugenio Suarez with, let's just say he has that same production from a season ago. Where does that technically take the Reds as they look to, again, not just compete for a wild card spot and play 162 games and have to hope for a win on game 162? Does this actually put them in position where they can contend for the division? We're going to talk about that with Charlie Goldsmith. Coming up, around the corner. Again, we welcome you back. It's the Justin Kinner Show. Want to talk a little college basketball every week. We get to hang out with friend of the show. Again, rebound rundown. Paul Frischner giving us some time like he does each week. Paul, welcome in, man. How are you?
I am great to be here, Justin. And Eugenio Suarez, it's a difference maker, Justin, right there. I heard you just talk about that. He's a difference maker. I love the signing, but I know we're not talking about that, but that's just my 2 cents.
Oh, I know he's a difference maker. It's just, but a difference maker enough to, because I think that with that pitching, they did all the grunt work to get that bullpen, refurbished in the offseason. When healthy, that's a top 5, top 10 rotation, no doubt about it. Even that lineup, though, like that lineup without him, how bad was it? I still think they would have been in position for a wild card to flirt with that. But does Eugenio Suarez push them over the edge? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Just how much of an impact is he going to have from that perspective?
The one thing I will say to tie this into our segment, and I was thinking about this the other night after the news broke, right? A lot of Reds fans would say that this is a season-altering signing, right? And they signed him for $15 million. You think about this to put it in perspective to what we're about to talk about. Eugenio Suarez just signed with the Reds for 162 games, plus hopefully some more in the playoffs for $15 million on a one-year contract. Think about these college basketball players at these major programs that are getting $2-3 million to play for 30-plus games, 40 minutes a year. It really puts into perspective how much money some of these players are making when you think about it from that perspective.
I mean, it really, and that's what's leading to all the messiness behind the scenes. If they don't play well, they transfer out, they don't see the end of, it's all getting but yeah, that's a lot of money being floated around. That's why when people get on me when I'm critical of college athletes, and even though I don't think I'm that critical, but they say, hold on, they're kids. I'm like, they're professional athletes at this point, but it's besides the point. You're not going to win that one. Let's start with Dayton in action tonight. And I think they haven't I don't think they've lost 5 straight in over 20 years. It's been a long time, and that's kind of what they're facing right now. Me and you, we've been doing this, interview for a couple weeks now. And, just a few weeks ago, we were talking about Dayton 5-0, tied with, of course, at the top, with the top teams in the A10, of course, St. Louis and George Mason at the time. And now Dayton, since then, being 5-0, they've lost 4 straight, trying to avoid losing 5 straight tonight against a St. Bonaventure team that solid, could potentially pull it off. They've lost to worse teams already in this 4-game losing streak. Dayton's in a bit of a slump, and I don't know what's going on with this Flyer team, because we knew they weren't going to get that at-large bid, but this doesn't even look like a team that's going to go very far, even in the A10 tournament at this point.
No, it doesn't. They have a lot of issues, but what I will say, Justin, is this does feel like a good spot for Dayton to get right. St. Bonaventure is very, they are crippled coming into this game as well. They over the weekend, the student section against George Mason was cheering to fire Mark Schmidt, right? Things have really deteriorated at St. Bonaventure as well. They started the season strong and are abysmal right now in A10 play. So this does feel like a spot at home where if you're Dayton, you're trying to snap that losing streak. This is at least a spot where you're not playing St. Louis over the weekend and then you're coming home against VCU, or you're coming home against George Mason, one of the better teams in the conference. This feels like a good spot tonight for Dayton to win a game. The problem right now with Dayton is that, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it's always felt like the season was kind of hanging on by a thread when they were 5-0. They were winning games, but they weren't winning them convincingly. You think back to that game on January 3rd against Loyola Chicago, had to come back in that game against one of the worst teams in the country at that point. And it just felt like they were doing enough to win games, which is what you need to do in college basketball, but they weren't really showing out. And that's where I come back to, what is this team right now, right? Like, you're still trying to find your identity, and we're sitting here on February 3rd. It doesn't feel like when you watch a Dayton game, right? When I'm sitting there watching Dayton night in and night out, and I think to myself, okay, at least I know I can get this, or at least I know I can get this, right? Like, Cincinnati has struggled this year immensely, but I know they're always going to be a pretty good defensive team. They're just going to struggle to score, but their identity is built around their defense. When you watch Dayton, I'm just not really sure night in and night out what they are going to consistently do well. And when it's the first week of February, you can't be saying that.
Yeah, and again, within this, look, you think about some of the losses that they've had. To lose to LaSalle, it doesn't get much worse than that. But then you have Archie Miller in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island's not playing terrible right now, but it's Archie Miller. You don't want to lose to Archie Miller, who has not really succeeded since leaving Dayton, years and years ago. And then to go to St. Louis. Look, I predicted they would beat St. Louis because what I had said is this has been the kind of the identity of Dayton over the years is they have a habit of playing down to the level of their opponents, and they flirt with fire, and they've been getting burned because they're not talented enough to overcome, flirting with fire and playing down to their opponent. But they've always risen to the occasion, and they've always been able to hang with some of the top biggest programs in the country. Not that that's St. Louis, but it's one of the best teams in the country right now. They didn't hang with them at all. And I mean, they got punched in the mouth. I have not seen Dayton get pushed around like that in a long, long time. That's the worst loss, the point spread wise, in the Anthony Grant era.
I think it was more of an endorsement, though, of St. Louis than it was an indictment on Dayton, because St. Louis has been doing this to everybody, and St. Louis is not just A10 good. I mean, they are nationally good. This is a St. Louis team that, I'll say it, I said it on a show the other day, I would not be surprised. You can call me crazy, but I really don't think it's that crazy to say that this St. Louis team is Final Four good, because they have all of the metrics that line up with a team that if the bracket breaks their way, and they're not going to get seeded favorably enough to really have a nice road to the Final Four. They're probably going to end up somewhere in that like 5 range. Maybe they could sneak up to a 4, but they're not going to be a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Probably, maybe if they run the table, maybe they could get up that high, but St. Louis, the number 1 offensive efficiency, or their number 1 effective field goal percentage in the country, number 1 defensive effective field goal percentage in the country. They are nationally good. So they're doing this to everybody. They're not just doing it to Dayton. I know Dayton fans listening to this would like to show more of a fight than to lose by 30 plus at St. Louis. But again, I think that's just how good St. Louis is this year. And to be honest, I think it's good for the A10 to have a team like that, to be that dominant. I think it's good for the conference. But at the same time, if you're Dayton, right now, all you're doing is playing for seeding in the A10 tournament. So, you have some opportunities here down the stretch, and it starts tonight. Set yourself up, try to get that double bye, and then try to make something happen in March.
Yeah, look, the season's not done. They have to win their conference tournament. That's the problem, though, because they haven't done that in decades. But it feels like the season's done. I mean, this fan base feels broken, doing the show here in Dayton. I mean, just the vibes of the way fans are talking, the season's done. It's over, right? And a lot of people are moving on to what's the future of Anthony Grant. He's been here 9 years, 2 tournament appearances, 1 technically because of the weird stuff that happened back in 20. But this is a program that it's a basketball school. Every dollar, every penny, every resource is getting the push for them to be way better than what they've been throughout the Anthony Grant era. So with that being said, one thing I heard a lot after the Archie Miller, when he left to take the Indiana job, was that Dayton doesn't want to hire a coach that is going to come here and use it as a stepping stone to get to the next big job. And that's one reason why a lot of people believe that Anthony Grant's actually not going to go anywhere, at least based on the, athletics department's standpoint. They're not looking to push him out because he wants to be here. The thing is, what is your perception of Dayton? Because if that coaching position does come open, Dayton seems to be a little like lost on, okay, they want a guy that's going to come here and not use it as a springboard job. But I think that's what it is. And it's not just because it's not because it's Dayton. I just think it's an A10 level school. I don't think people dream of growing up to be the head coach of the Dayton Flyers and want to be there their entire career. I just feel like there's a little bit of an identity crisis with Dayton as far as what they envision out of that position right there.
And it's not unique to Dayton either. Look, I've covered a lot of schools where they feel like they should be the program that the coach wants to stay at for a long time, right? Xavier's had the same issue over the years, and Sean Miller leaving, Chris Mack leaving, Thad Matta leaving, a lot of coaches that have left. Dayton, right? They are a program that is one of the best programs in the A10, a historic basketball program that feels like when a coach comes there, that should be where they want to coach. And I totally understand that. As fans, that's what you want. As a program, that's what you want. I totally get it. But here's the thing about how you have to look at this in this day and age. Coaches are constantly on the move all over the country. This is happening everywhere at every level. It doesn't even matter, where you are right now. Coaches consistently want a new landscape, a fresh face, whatever it is. And we have to remind yourself, it's a couple of things. One is that it's never been easier to rebuild a program from the transfer portal, being able to go get players. You can do it quicker than you ever could. So if you have to bring in a new coach, a new coach and a really good new coach can turn things around quickly. And that makes you forget what the nostalgia of what it could have been. But on the flip side, think about, whenever fans talk about we want our Mark Few, that's always the example, because he's the only one that has done it at this maybe mid-major level. It's always, we want our Mark Few. You hear all these schools around the country that are on, the Dayton level. It's always, we want our Mark Few. Well, Mark Few's been there, and he has a very unique job on the West Coast where he really rules the roost out there and has established a foothold in the Pacific Northwest. It's very different than being in the Midwest from a recruiting perspective. Mike Krzyzewski, sure, he was at Duke for a long time. Tom Izzo at Michigan State for a long time. Coaches that have been at these blue blood programs, Roy Williams moved around, right? I mean, he was at North Carolina for a couple of decades, but he was at Kansas before that. I mean, coaches move around. And so that's why I would say, in this day and age, I understand, like I said, the nostalgia of wanting your coach. You want somebody that feels truly invested in your program and is going to be there for the long haul. But just go hire the best coach available. Hire somebody that is going to win you games at your program to make sure that Dayton is on a trajectory up moving forward in what is hopefully an improved A10 over the next couple of years. And don't worry about, is this coach going to stay here longer than 5 or 6 years? Most coaches, 99% of coaches around the country don't do that. They move around. And, it's the exception, not the rule, when a coach is at a school longer than 7 or 8 years.
Paul Frischner, rebound rundown with this. Again, Dayton will be in action later tonight. St. Bonaventure looking to end that 4-game losing streak. Dayton, a 4.5-point favorite coming up later on tonight. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Xavier. Speaking of coaches and coaches moving, when it was announced that Xavier was getting Richard Pitino to come be the head coach, that was I think that was a great get, especially after losing Sean Miller. You just felt like a punch in the gut. And then you get a big name like that to come here and coach. What's the likelihood of him looking elsewhere after just 1 year if that one particular just right job opens up? Obviously, things aren't going well in year one at Xavier, but how do you see the future of Richard Pitino and Xavier as far as their connection?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you saw it on the field of 68 the other day that it was being talked about, right? That it feels like the Providence opening is going to happen this upcoming off season, and Richard Pitino, clearly an alumni of Providence. I don't see him leaving after 1 year at Xavier, though. I mean, he's establishing himself at Xavier, and I can't speak for Richard. I have no idea what his thought process is, but I just have a really hard time thinking that after only one season at Xavier, he would look to go to Providence. The catch would be that it is where he went to school. He's a Northeast guy, but there are going to be options for Providence to say that, they go out and they get, maybe it's somebody like a Josh Schertz from St. Louis, whoever it might be. I don't see Richard Pitino leaving Xavier after 1 year.
Yeah, that's the field of 68 that you talked about. That's kind of what I was referring to earlier. But that one job, that there's that one perfect job. It's not him just looking to leave Xavier to leave it, but it's that one job that if he was to leave it, that one could be the one that kind of tugs on the heartstrings a little to get him to do it if he chose to do so. Nonetheless, continue it on. Wright State out of the Horizon League, just continuing to win and coming off of a road trip. That Milwaukee trip's always a tough one for them. I mean, they usually always split that. That Detroit trip's always tough. They always usually end up splitting one of those Detroit games, whether it's Detroit and Oakland. They've never, since Oakland's joined the conference, they've never swept both the Detroit and the Milwaukee series, and they're coming off wins over Milwaukee on the road and Green Bay over the weekend, and they turned their attention towards Robert Morris coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, look, the offense is scoring now. I mean, they score 88 against Northern Kentucky in a rivalry win. They score 83 against Green Bay. Defense is continuing to hold up like we've talked about here over the last few weeks. They're 10-2 in the Horizon League. They're getting production from all over the floor. And to me, it's all about the 3 days in March in the Horizon League, right? It's all about playing as well as you can in Indianapolis. But what a season it's been for Wright State so far. I mean, to come into to league play when league play really started, and to be 7-7 on December 29th after a win against Oakland. But even before that, you're 6-7. And now here you are at 15-8. And they're playing a fun brand of basketball, right? They're starting to score more. They're defending at a high level. They're winning games that matter. You've talked extensively about Michael Cooper. There are fun pieces to this team, and they're an exciting group to watch, Justin.
Yeah, and they kind of do a little bit of everything. That's why if they are fortunate to win the Horizon League tournament and get to the NCAA tournament, they do a lot of little things right that teams who do pull off upsets in the NCAA tournament, they check off all those boxes. They shoot the three well. They could play defense. They have depth in the post, and they have guards, very good guards as far as isolation guards on the outside. Michael Cooper, the true freshman that you just mentioned. And what I love is the fact that you're seeing the progression throughout the season, not just from the win-loss standpoint, but like Kellen Pickett. I mean, Michael Cooper's a true freshman. Kellen Pickett's a true freshman, and very well might be the better of the two by the time it's all said and done because of what he does at both ends of the floor. I mean, just a presence. He has such a long wingspan. Watching the growth of him has been phenomenal. That's really kind of opened things up for how everyone else has played. TJ Birch, one of the best on-ball defenders in the country. In fact, the last time I saw, I think he leads the league in steals per game as far as that goes. So the kids, they have a lot of really good balance across the board.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And look at what they can do again in the Horizon and the rest of the way. I mean, they have Northern Kentucky again to end the season, but their schedule sets up pretty favorably. They have Cleveland State, IU Indy, Purdue Fort Wayne a couple of times. This is a pretty good schedule for Cleveland State down the stretch.
Paul Frischner, a rebound rundown with us. We talked before starting the interview today about the Field of 68. They put out, they've been ranking every conference, the best jobs in each conference. And within the Horizon League, I didn't know where Wright State would fall, but they came in fourth. But Robert Morris came in at number 1, and that's who Wright State plays on Wednesday. It's the best, job or whatever you want to call it in the conference. They're coming off the NCAA tournament from last season. But Wright State, that's who they have next on Wednesday night is Robert Morris.
Yeah, Andy Toole's been there for what feels like forever now, right? He was there in 2010, and he's still here in 2026, and he's done a great job there at Robert Morris. And I haven't been to their arena, but you and I were talking about it. I've watched plenty of Robert Morris games. I've seen the arena, and it looks beautiful. And, you talk about the facilities, you talk about funding, and most of the conversation now in today's day and age of college basketball revolves around NIL. And kudos to the schools that really put money into the facilities before this NIL boom, because now if you're getting any big donations, it's just going straight to NIL. You're not seeing as much building as you are seeing NIL. And so for that reason, for Robert Morris to get into a new arena, to put what they had behind those facilities and now be able to set themselves up for a job like that. Yeah, they're coming off that from last year. Maybe they're not contending this year right at the top of the Horizon League, but Wright State's setting that bar right there, and Oakland has certainly had a great season as well. But I think there is a reason Robert Morris got all those first place votes. Yeah.
Another mid-major program that I didn't anticipate us spending so much time on throughout this, but I mean, my goodness, one of the best stories in all of college basketball. The Red Hawks, Miami, they cracked the top 25. That was a big deal. Then a week later, they move up another spot. They're number 24. Well, now at 22-0 and just continuing to win. They've now moved up to number 23 in the country. And the Red Hawks, Travis Steele and company, a team that you and the Rebound Rundown, you guys have been following extensively at this point. They just continue to climb the ranks.
They do. And I'll be very interested, Justin, to see what happens specifically tonight and the rest of this week. This is their most difficult week of the regular season left. They're at Buffalo tonight, a team that just took them to overtime a couple of weeks ago. It took a miracle for Miami to even pull that off, to get back, to force overtime, and then to hit a game-winning shot from Pete Suter, who's become one of the best players in the MAC, the preseason MAC player of the year. He's had a great year. Really has stepped up in the absence of Evan Ipsaro as far as a leadership role for this team. But for Miami, this is a huge week, because if you get through this week undefeated, it's not really all that far out of the realm of possibility to say that they're going to run the table the rest of the way in the MAC. But a difficult game tonight at Buffalo, a team that shoots the three exceptionally well. The total, I think, was in the 160s, which tells you that both teams are going to play fast. They're going to shoot a lot. They're going to try and score at a pretty high rate. You hope if you're Miami, you shoot it better than you did on Saturday. Only 7 for 28 from 3, 25% is not going to get it done tonight against Buffalo. What I will say is about this Miami team, if you haven't watched a ton of them, they can score. The offense is not the problem. They're the nation's highest scoring offense in the nation, not just the MAC, the nation's highest scoring offense. The defense is going to be what carries them as far as they want to go. Because if they can defend like they did on Saturday in the second half against NIU, where they're only up 2 at the half, they come back and they win by whatever it was, 24. They have to be able to do that down the stretch, because if they don't defend and then they get cold, that's going to be where they get tripped up.
Yep, and they're going to be in action coming up later on here tonight as well. Again, Buffalo, as you mentioned, Miami, number 23 in the country. They're 4.5-point favorites on the road at Buffalo. They had to win in overtime against Buffalo at home just a few weeks ago. But that was that big week that finally pushed them over the top to get them into the top 25. Buffalo will be waiting for them coming up later on, 6:30, the tip-off. That's an ESPN Plus game. We've never talked Ohio State here, and as we wrap this up, but I'm a Jake Diebler guy. I was happy to see him, get the nod to take over the program, but it looks like they're maybe year 6 of not dancing in March, if that's the case. The reason I bring this up, we're talking about coaching changes, coaches moving around a lot. So much was made, and it keeps being brought up. You look at the success that John Calipari is having over at Arkansas. There was a lot of rumors and reports that he wanted that Ohio State job, and they opted not to go in that direction. Ohio State's an interesting program because we know it's all about football, and more football. But, man, I'm a Jake Diebler guy. I'm pulling for him. I don't know what to make of the Ohio State program. They're always good, or they're solid, but they're just not good enough at this point, and it's going to be interesting to see how the final month of the season plays out for them.
Oh, I think you said it great right there. That was exactly what I was going to say about Ohio State. Is if you look at their season right now, they're 14-7, they're 6-5 in the Big Ten, and they don't have a great win, but they also don't have a bad loss. They've done just enough to put themselves in the bubble conversation, but they haven't separated themselves to say they might get in as a 10 seed or something to where they're not truly on the bubble. They just keep hanging around. And that's what it's felt like under Diebler here the last couple of years since he got the job a couple seasons ago. And you're right, Calipari was right there in the mix for that job when it was coming open. And now if you're Ohio State, you do have to think to yourself, right? I mean, you're obviously a football school, like you said. Football's always going to be the priority at Ohio State, but you're also in a hotbed of a recruiting area in Ohio. And that's where I think this coaching cycle, I think it's going to be underrated how exciting this coaching carousel is going to be in this offseason, because I think you're going to see some jobs open that we aren't necessarily expecting or hearing a lot about right now. Maybe there will be some high profile retirements that come out of nowhere. And that's where, you're hearing who's going to get a job where. I mean, look, you could be talking about Ohio State or some of these other big, who knows? Does Izzo call it quits? Does Bill Self say that he's having, that he's had so many health problems here? Does he say that he just wants to worry about his health and that's it at Kansas? I mean, you never know what kind of high profile jobs open. And Ohio State, I don't know if it's the top tier job with all of those, but they certainly have the resources that would put them in a very appealing job for a lot of people.
One source I have that's very close to the program said the problem with the Calipari approach was if you bring in John Calipari, you have to invest not just into him, obviously, but into the program. And the problem is when Jake Diebler, when he needs a starting point guard and he needs those NIL funds for that starting point guard, but Ohio State needs a backup center on football, that backup center is going to get that money before the starting point guard does for the Ohio State basketball program. And that's one wall that they've run into. And one reason they said we can't go the Calipari way because of those things. Like if you bring in Calipari, you have to give everything to the program. If you have Calipari leading the way, they just couldn't do it the way Arkansas can. And that's one thing I've heard as to what has led to them not going in that direction.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me. That's just the way Ohio State is, and like I said, it'll always be a football school. But from a basketball perspective, they're still right there to be competitive, and that's why we'll see. I don't know if I expect Diebler to be let go after this season. I wouldn't be shocked by it, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he got one more year.
Absolutely. Again, Paul Frischner, rebound rundown, awesome enough to give us some time each and every week throughout the college basketball season. And we'll touch base in a week. A lot of basketball this week. Dayton in action tonight. Miami, Cincinnati, Xavier. We just talked to Ohio State. Wright State's going to be in action on Wednesday night, tomorrow night, as they take on Robert Morris. And we'll recap it all next week with Paul Frischner. Paul Frischner, Rebound Rundown. Paul, you the man. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. I hope Dayton wins so we can have some more positive talk about the Flyers next week, Justin.
There you go. People always say I just enjoy the negative talk when it comes to the Flyers, but give me something to talk about, Dayton. Give me something positive to talk about. We'll see what happens. All right, good stuff. More of the Justin Kenner Show when we come back. You're listening to Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
Honest, inclusive education helps students become critical thinkers and engaged citizens. This Black History Month, stand with the Ohio Education Association as we stand up for our students' freedom to learn.
You can make the decision right now to get lasting relief from that awful joint pain. Don't go another year compromising because of that pain in your knees or shoulder. Call QC Kinetics now. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative non-surgical pain relief. Your body has what it needs to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue. And QC Kinetics can make it happen. No drugs, no surgery, no downtime. The future of pain treatment has arrived, and QC has tens of thousands of satisfied patients all over America. People with back pain, hip pain, any pain associated with arthritis or an injury. This is not a Band-Aid. This is a revolutionary treatment that can get you moving again. Get your life back. And listen, it's non-surgical. If this is the year you decide to fight back against that pain, take the first step now. Call QC Kinetics. Get a free consultation on your calendar today. Call 937-936-0325. 937-936-0325.
For decades, people have been asking, what's the famous recipe behind Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken? And we've decided we're finally going to tell you. Starting with the 8-piece family meal and its 8 pieces of crispy, delicious bone-in chicken, 4 fluffy, buttery biscuits, and 2 large sides. Oh, wait, I'm just getting word from our lawyers that I can't actually tell you any of that. So, better pick up an 8-piece family meal and figure it out for yourself. Good luck. The 8-piece family meal, only at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, famous for a reason.
Thinking about a new home, a remodel, or an outdoor upgrade? Celebrate 70 years at the Miami County Home and Outdoor Living Show, presented by 84 Lumber, February 13th through the 15th at Hobart Arena in Troy. Talk one-on-one with local experts, see the latest ideas and trends, and get practical advice for your next project. Admission is free, powered by T-Fiber, February 13th through the 15th. Don't miss the Miami County Home and Outdoor Living Show. Your home, your style. Trusted for 70 years.
You have empty office space to fill or home office to create. You know what you need. You know what you'd like. But you also have a pretty good idea after you've shopped around the usual places. What you need and what you like might not happen. Well, then you haven't been to Charles Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. Nobody has their selection. Nobody has their discounts. And every week, there's something new. If you need office furniture, Larrick's Warehouse Outlet can sell it to you for half the price and below manufacturer selected prices. Half price and below on hundreds of items. From budget to the best. From desks to filing cabinets. Before you go anywhere else, do yourself a favor and come to Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. With 25,000 square feet of selection, you're not going to want to go anywhere else. Larrick's Warehouse Outlet at 23 Mac Oil Avenue in Dayton. Open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Larrick's, continuing the tradition.
You still thinking job change in the new year?
Yeah, I need something that's in high demand and more stable in this economy.
IT?
Yeah, cybersecurity, maybe even AI.
That's what I did.
Really? How?
Went to My Computer Career. You don't need any prior experience, and you could start your new career in a matter of months. A lot of IT pros go to school there, too, to level up.
Sweet. Are classes online or on campus?
Both.
Wow, I'll check it out. Thanks.
Make this your year. Take the free career evaluation now at mycomputercareer.edu, an elite CompTIA certification partner. Financial aid is available to those who qualify, including VA benefits.
How do you stay humble when you're America's #1 wiper blade? That's what we're currently dealing with at Rain-X. Is it even possible to humble brag when you bully Mother Nature like we do? Do we sound too conceited if we keep repeating how Rain-X is the #1 brand of wiper blades in America? No, we'll take a lesson from our wipers and just keep doing our job with humility. As America's #1 wiper blade. Rain-X. Outsmart the elements.
With Progressive Insurance, you could save big when you bundle your auto, home, motorcycle, RV, or boat insurance. Visit Progressive.com for more information. That's Progressive.com.
When you think of the most exciting team in Dayton, it's okay if you don't think of the doctors and therapists at Premier Health. We don't have jerseys or trading cards. We don't get primetime coverage. We don't sell out arenas. Have good drip. Or autograph sessions. We're just happy to be your team's favorite team.
I'm Boomer Esiason. My mom died from cancer. She was only 37 years old. She didn't have life insurance, and that was devastating for my family. That's why having life insurance is so important to me. Ethos makes it fast and easy. Get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. You can get up to $3 million in coverage with no medical exam.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/play. That's ethos.com/play. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Are you ready to tackle this tax season alone? Well, you don't have to. Belmont Business Consultants and Tax Services, with its 30-plus years of experience, is here to help you with business and individual taxes, bookkeeping, and payroll, either in person, drop-off, or through their secure client portal. Belmont Business Consultants in Eaton and Dayton is standing by. Call them in Eaton at 937-472-3300 or in Dayton at 937-252-2217 or on the web at belmontbctxs.com.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 416 here in the Miami Valley, 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Okay, I really appreciate Paul Frischner. I think he does a great job with the rebound rundown. I mean, as knowledgeable. I mean, every team you throw at him, I mean, you would think that he's on the beat for each one of those teams. That's how good he is when it comes to all that. So Paul Frischner every Tuesday hangs out with us here on the show. So looking forward to, following up with him next week. But again, a lot going on right now. And one thing we talked about was, Dayton Flyers fans, when it comes to the perception of the head coaching position for the Dayton Flyers, I remember back when Archie Miller left, just how offended everybody was that Archie left that Archie left Dayton to take the Indiana job, and how mad everybody was. And all I could think back to that time is, but that's how this works. Like, you go to Dayton, you have success, and you do go to that bigger, better job. I know it's hard for some egotistical Flyer fans out there to hear this, but like, Dayton is not it's not a destination job. It is a hell of a job. It is an awesome job to have. It's a job that there could be worse jobs. If you're a coach that really can't find a way to cut it in the Power 4 ranks, this is like a good level. Like, for instance, Shaka, and again, I'm not even putting Dayton in the Marquette situation here because they need to get to the Big East. But until Dayton gets out of the A-10, they will never be a program that any coach out there says, you know what, it's not a Duke, it's not a North Carolina, it's not a blue blood, but I could be here for a long, long time and be content with it. Marquette is that. That's why Shaka, has been there as long as he has. That's why he's doing what he's doing there. But like, you also need to go somewhere where there's a history of consistent success. Dayton wins and wins a lot, but they don't win at the level of which they tell you that they expect to win at. And that's kind of the problem. So my point with all of this is, why is it that Dayton fans, why do you get mad when people bring up the fact that, Dayton is a springboard job? It just is. I know it doesn't fit the narrative and it doesn't fit who you want to aesthetically be, but no one grows up saying, man, I want to be the head coach of the Dayton Flyers for my entire life. Nobody. Now, Anthony Grant loves being the head coach of the Dayton Flyers because it's the only job that you can consistently have, consistently underachieve, and consistently remain employed because you're checking off the most important box of just don't leave us for a bigger job. So I don't get it. And I think that until Dayton just accepts that, okay, if you are a rising up-and-coming coach, come here. We're going to give you every resource possible. Come here and kill it. Because guess what? If a coach comes here and ultimately takes another bigger job, that means while he was here, you had some of the most successful runs in your school's history, and then you get to start it all over again. What you don't want is a coach that's been here for 9 years, consistently and constantly underachieving. Nobody's knocking on the door to get Anthony Grant. Nobody is knocking on the door to pry away Anthony Grant from the Dayton Flyers. Nobody. There were a lot of schools that wanted to pull Archie Miller away from Dayton. And one of the best college basketball jobs in the country did. And the reality is when Archie ultimately left Dayton to take the Indiana job, I remember that the athletics department, Neil Sullivan, had come out and said that, we had prepared to make him a top 10 compensated coach in college basketball. So for people that say, well, he left because of the money, no, that wasn't it at all. Dayton was willing to make him a top 10 compensated coach in college basketball. He left because, again, Dayton's just not a destination school. Archie was a prime example of a guy, go to Dayton, kill it, go take that bigger job elsewhere. Yeah, well, how will that work out for him? It doesn't matter. Stop acting like you don't understand. Like, for a basketball fan base that is supposed to be all about college basketball, stop pretending that you don't understand how this works. And I bring this up because one reason that Anthony Grant did get the job was because he was viewed as a guy that was not going to come here to have success and to use that success to springboard to something bigger. That's one of the main reasons he got the job. Okay? It was the fact that he was a former Flyer and that he would be a Flyer lifer and that he wasn't going to use this to springboard to something bigger. And if that's your goal with the coach, then don't complain when you're constantly underachieving because technically you're prioritizing that because you're worried about your image and everything else. Well, your image is taking a hit left and right when you're so obsessed with not being dumped by a coach. Dayton was embarrassed that Archie left, and I don't understand that. You're a mid-major with high major resources, but you're a mid-major program in the A-10. And I hate when people say, if you think Dayton's mid-major, they have high major resources, but they're in the A-10. That's what they are. The mid-major top 25 poll, they rank all the top 25 mid-majors in the country. Dayton is consistently ranked in the top 25 mid-major poll. You're a mid-major program with high major resources. That's not a hot take. That's reality. And for things to change for Dayton, I do think you have to find whatever way possible to get out of the A-10 and get to the Big East. And until you do that, nobody is going to look at Dayton and say, I want to be there for a decade plus. And then you heard Paul Frischner bring it up now. Like, that's not how things go. Coaches come and go everywhere. That's just how this goes. Look at Xavier. By the way, is Xavier a destination? And by the way, Xavier's in the Big East. Is Xavier a destination job? Is Xavier a springboard job? Because in the last, 15, 20, 30 years, Xavier has been way more successful of a program than Dayton, and coaches still get the hell out of there. Or Thad Matta got the hell out of there, right? Like that's how this works. I mean, we saw it with Sean Miller last year. Sean Miller got back into coaching after the Arizona debacle, went back to a spot he was comfortable in with Xavier, had success, and took that first ounce of success that he could find and used it to springboard his way over to Texas. So when I say that, even getting out of the A-10 doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be a springboard job, because we saw it with Xavier. Xavier's a basketball school as well, with rich basketball history as well. In the Big East, Sean Miller still bolted. Like, coaches will come and go. We've seen it. Mac, everyone. Those coaches come and they bolt constantly. Dayton will never be a school that a coach goes to and says, I want to be a Dayton Flyer head coach for life. Set your goals higher, my guy. That's not realistic. I don't care how egotistical. I don't care how many egos in suits that run that athletics department want to try to bash you upside the head to convince you that this is not a school that you come to springboard elsewhere. The hell it isn't. Bob Grant was the former athletic director for Wright State. I remember talking with him early on. He said he used to get so mad when other programs would knock on the door to pluck his coaches away. He would get so mad when other schools would try to pluck some of their players away. And he said at some point, you got to be realistic of who you are as a program. And instead of being upset about it, he said it almost became flattering. Their baseball program, it's the best baseball program in the state of Ohio. They are constantly replacing coaches. It's a more consistent, better baseball program than Ohio State. Definitely better than Dayton's, better than Xavier, Cincinnati. Like, they are the best, most consistent program in the state of Ohio when it comes to college baseball. They are constantly replacing their head coaches. And it's like, well, what? I mean, look at and their baseball program puts a ton of guys in the pros, right? They have a ton of guys in the pros. So you're going to be coming here. You're going to be taking over a program that consistently has MLB talent. You're going to constantly be in the NCAA tournament. And yet those coaches still leapfrog and leave somewhere else. So Bob Grant said it became flattering that that's the case. In fact, if you have a coach that nobody's knocking on the door of, that's where you as an AD have to sit back and say, well, what do we have then? If we have something that somebody else doesn't want, then what do we actually have? And that's what the athletics department has to ask themselves at UD. I mean, no one is trying to pluck Anthony Grant away from Dayton. Nobody. So what do you actually have then? All right, year 2, Clint Sargent, hell of a head coach at Wright State. Only year 2. All right, he takes over for Scott Nagy, who left for Southern Illinois. He was fortunate to get some key pieces back, but ultimately a weak roster in year 1. Hit the portal like crazy, developed his high school talent like crazy, and now they're first place in the conference. One of the most efficient offensive teams and defensive teams in the country. Wright State, the favorites to win their league. I guarantee you, Wright State wins the league this year, wins the Horizon League tournament and gets to the NCAA tournament. We're going to probably be talking about how much longer before he's gone. That's just how this works. When you are not a blue blood program, and that Dayton is not, you will always be a program that if your coach has any kind of success, there will always be greener grass, bluer water, and more money at the end of the day. That's the most important thing, right? And the ability to win a national championship. Coaches don't always just want to be the coach of a program that makes a Cinderella run to the Elite Eight. They want to be the program that consistently gets to the Elite Eight and is expected to get to the Elite Eight, not throwing a parade because we got to the Elite Eight. I don't know. And like, I'm not even bashing Dayton at this point. I'm really not. It's just, it is what it is. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. And by the way, the season, and I talked about this with Paul Frischner, the bottom line is like the season's far from over. Dayton can still go on a major run and win this A-10 tournament and get to the NCAA tournament. That's going to save a lot of face. It's going to really kind of give a lot of pushback to a lot of the critics out there, myself included. But we're still talking about only 3 NCAA tournament appearances in 9 years, or 2 in 9 years if that ends up being the case. So we'll see what ultimately happens. A lot of basketball left to be played, but Dayton coming up later on tonight trying to avoid a 5-game losing streak. So there they are. They're started out 5-0 in A10 play. They're 5-4 in A10 play right now. They're looking up at St. Joe's, who's 6-3 in A10 play. VCU at 7-2. George Mason 8-1, and then there's St. Louis, who's 9-0. St. Louis is good. I mean, good. I mean, they're the number 19 team in the country, 21-1 on the season. Their only loss, a 1-point loss against Stanford. Back at, I think it was the Acrisure Invitational. I mean, it was months and months ago. But this is a good team, and you heard Paul talk about it. Like, no one's going to pick this team to make it to the Final Four, but if they get the right, they're going to be that 5 or 6 seed range. If they get the right seeding, all right, if they get the right path, it would not be shocking to see this team get to a Final Four. That's how stacked that this team is. And they just punched Dayton in the mouth 102-71 just last week. They're going to be at Davidson later on tonight. That's a 9:00 tip-off. And then, as I mentioned, Dayton going to be in action later on tonight as they have St. Bonaventure in town. So we'll have more on that coming up tomorrow. That's a 7:00 tip-off on CBS Sports Network. Dayton 14-8, 5-4 in A10 play. St. Bonaventure, they're second to last in the A10 at 2-7, 13-9 overall. So Dayton should win tonight. You know, they're going up against a team that's second to last in the A10, but the problem is they just lost at home a few weeks ago against Loyola, who is the worst team in the A10. So there you go. Not Loyola. I'm sorry, LaSalle. They lost to LaSalle. They barely beat Loyola on the road, and then, of course, took care of Loyola at home. But either way, I mean, this is one of those where you can't lose this game tonight. David Shaw says they aren't Final Four good. Okay, everything out of your mouth is negative, Shaw. Everything. How are they not Final Four good? I mean, it would be a Cinderella run to the Final Four, yes, but they have everything. They have the size, they have the bench, they have the shooting, they have the point guard. They have everything that you need to go on a deep run of the NCAA tournament. And as Paul said, again, it's all about, you know, you could maybe, if you win out, you're going to move up into that potential 3 seed, and then that path to get there becomes significantly easier if you're St. Louis. Negative, Shaw. But you're right, Shaw. What if they get hurt? All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Charles Downs, what up, Charles? He said Wright State is better than UD again this year. I mean, look. I think, look, for one, this Wright State team is really good. They have the size, they have the guard play, they have the point guard, they have the shooting. I think that this team is good enough to beat Dayton this year. Yes, no doubt. In fact, I think that's been consistently the case in recent years where outside of a few, you know, Wright State has been good enough to beat Dayton. Well, I say that they're better than Dayton. They shouldn't be. They don't have anything near what Dayton does when it comes to money, resources, and the ability to have a better roster. But that's why I've always said Wright State, I'll always take a program that does more with less. Dayton does less with more. Wright State does more with less. And we've seen that in the last decade. Both programs have the same amount as NCAA. They have the same amount of NCAA tournament appearances. Both programs have the same amount of NCAA tournament wins. And one has unlimited resources, and the other one, Wright State, does not. I'll always take the program that does more with less any day of the week. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. If you missed our conversation with Paul Frischner, we have that coming up for you when we return.
Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. They're anything but your usual nugs at participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last.